Dharma Maharaja they assumed proved that they were Dharma Pravartakas, well-wishers of the people and the friends of the poor. A feature of the Kadamba administration is the existence of the post of Yuvaraja. The Yuvaraja was appointed in the lifetime of the ruling monarch. He was generally placed in charge of a region of the empire to get him acquainted with the administration and to train him up to take independent decision. Some Yuvarajas stayed in the capital and assisted the king in the administration. For instance, Mrugashivarma, who looked after the administration of Nari Davalanadu, was recalled to the capital to assist the aging king Kakusathavarma, who took over the administration for a second time after the death of his son Shantavarma. The appointment of Yuvaraja forestalled the war of succession to throne to some extent. Many dynasties in South India did not possess a formal council of ministers. Maurice thinks that they had a council consisting of 5 ministers, divided into 5 categories according to the nature of the work. They included the steward of the house, Manevagade, who looked after the income and expenditure of the royal household, the Tantrapalas or councillors who were placed in charge of external affairs, the minister of state or Pradhana who was perhaps the chancellor of exchequer, the steward of betel leaf or Tambula Parapajagara who regulated the affairs of the royal court, and the secretary of the council who prepared minutes of the cabinet meeting. Great care was taken in the selection of ministers. Persons well versed in sastras, science of logic, rhetoric and politics, intelligent, loyal and capable of giving advice to the king both in times of peace and in times of war were selected as ministers. In addition to this, they were to possess qualification of military leadership. By their character and honest work they were able to bring an indirect influence on the policies of the king. The Kadambas appear to have maintained a central secretariat. An inscription of Mandatravarma belonging to the 5th century AD speaks of Rahasyadikrita or private secretary. The correspondence between the king and the provincial governors passed through him. He attended to the work of writing and publishing of the inscriptions. Among other officials, mention may be made of secret policy framers, Mahamatras, Rajukas or officers in charge of revenue Lekakis or writers, provincial administration. For purposes of administrative convenience, the empire was divided into 4 divisions. When the empire was at its height, these divisions were not only big but they were difficult for proper management. The extent of empire was reduced when northern Karnataka fell into the hands of the Vakatakis. There were only 3 divisions during the time of Kakusathavarma. The western and northern parts of the empire were constituted into a division with Halsi as its capital. The southern parts of the empire were found into a division with its capital at Tripaveta, while 3rd division comprised the eastern parts of the empire. Upchangi was the seat of the government. Shantavarma, Krishnavarma and Kumaravarma were ruling as viceroys over the respective divisions. The viceroys were appointed by the king and were responsible to him. The king watched the doings very closely and often sent his nobles to supervise their work. The next administrative unit was the district. Manias were in charge of administration. Village was the last unit of the administration. Gramika or Grama Mukhya looked after the administration of the village. Judicial administration. King was the fountainhead of justice and was the final court of appeal. There were a number of courts. Dharmadiksa was the chief justice. They dispensed with civil suits, whereas important cases were decided by the king himself. Punishments depended on the gravity of the offenses. The law strictly forbade the assault of one person by another, even though the man attacked happened to be a thief, robber, burglar, enemy or evil-minded person. The violators of this law were to pay a penalty of 3 gold coins. There was no capital punishment, and even for murder the guilty was fined. An inscription records that a murderer paid 100 gadyanas to the relatives of the assassinated and half of this sum to the state as fine. In some cases the suspected was made to undergo fire ordeal. Army administration. Details are lacking regarding the army administration. King was the commander-in-chief of the army and he led the army in person to the battlefield. The ministers, who all